Hey everybody, Edo here with another RetrowareTV.com special. Today we're going to take a look at a product made by Ultimarc. Ultimarc makes a variety of products for the Mame arcade enthusiasts, I guess you can call them. Basically the product we're going to take a look at today is called the J-Pac. The J-Pac is very unique in that it lets people who have a standard JAMA arcade cabinet hook up a Mame computer inside of it. This is great for people who want to use an arcade authentic monitor with their Mame machine. This setup here is actually just that. It's an arcade monitor with a PC and the Jpac installed. Recently I took a trip over to John D's place and installed a Jpac for his brand new Japanese Sega Astro City candy cab. So let's throw over to that video footage and check it out. This is the Jpac here. And all you have to do really is connect your JAMA harness from your arcade cabinet right into the Jpac. Then you have your VGA going to your computer, as well as your keyboard and the keyboard output. The keyboard output goes in here, and then your actual keyboard cable goes right here. This allows you to be able to still use your keyboard as well as using the controls. The reason you have to do this is because the controls actually work off of keyboard inputs. So something like up will be mapped to the letter U and down the letter D and so forth. Now, the problem with the Jpac is that it only supports 3 buttons at its core. Actually, technically it supports 4. Some Japanese JAMA harnesses have 4 inputs, but this one actually only has 3. So the problem with that is Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, they use more than 3 buttons. So the answer to that is that the Jpac has these individual inputs for that are labeled like switch 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so forth. So what we have to do is wire these buttons directly to the Jpac. To do that, we need to know a little bit about arcade control wiring. So as you can see here, we're inside the control panel, and as you can see that there's no connections made to these buttons. Basically all the controls are linked to the JAMA harness. Each color signifies an input. That's why they're labeled different colors. Now technically you can, if you had your own, if you made your own JAMA harness, you can use whatever colors, and not all JAMA harnesses use the same colors, but if you have like an instruction manual that came with your JAMA harness, it'll tell you that blue is for one input, green is for another. Now, what all the buttons have in common is the ground. The ground hooks up to each individual button, but they're daisy chained. So this button goes in here, this ground goes in here, connects to this ground, comes out from here and connects to this ground, and so on and so forth. This is done for all the buttons. So what we have to do is that the Jpac actually has an input for ground as well as the individual inputs that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to have to daisy chain all these grounds together and connect them right to the Jpac. Now to do that, I'm going to use some wire, obviously, and I'm just gonna have to like tie these together and then put these 0.187 female connectors onto it. So let's do that. Now to crimp these, I'm just gonna twist this wire together like so, pop on the connector. Have to kind of jam it in there, and then just take a crimper tool and squeeze down pretty hard. And that's it. And then basically I'm gonna make like a little harness, mini harness for all the grounds, and then I have to connect a longer cable like this to the Jpac. So let's fast forward to that. Alright, so I made my little harness, I guess if you can call it. And all I'm going to do is, first of all, the last connector obviously is not going to have anything hooked into it besides itself. That's okay. It might look a little weird, but it's fine. So I have 3 buttons, which I'm going to place here. And then another 3, which I'm going to place here. And then this is going to go to the Jpac in the slot located ground. Now these buttons, I'd like to know, these are actually Japanese buttons. US arcade machines have different micro switches. These only have 2 prongs. The US micro switches tend to have 3. In this case, the Japanese ground is this one right here on the right. It's a little different. I'll put a little diagram so you can see what the US looks like up. And also I'm going to do, like I said, just connect the connector right into the slot of the button. You just have to do this for all your buttons. See, this one's a little loose. So what I'm going to do is actually take a pair of pliers or something, just bend this down a little, makes it a little tighter. Like jumping around. You might be asking, what exactly is ground? Each button is wired, like I said, individually, with the exception of the grounds. And basically a signal is sent from the button, but it doesn't close the circuit until the push button is placed. And in that instant, like I said, the connection becomes closed and sends a little signal to the arcade board, or in this case, our J-Pac, and lets it know that a button has been pressed. So yeah, and now I made 6 individual wires for each button. The default layout for Mame is 6 buttons, and they're in order. So this is technically button 1, this is button 2, this is button 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's exactly how I'm going to hook up these extra buttons. Now I'm only using 2 color wires. It's kind of hard to get all this multicolor wire. So you're really going to have to keep track of which wire is what. Now let's say in the future a wire gets disconnected and you have like this loom of wires. You're like, I really don't know which is which. It's a kind of a good idea. I'm not going to do it because I'm lazy. To maybe put a little piece of paper and tape around it, and write on that little piece of paper a number. This way you know what wire is which. But I'm pretty confident in my skill, so I'm just going to pop it in. Now one thing I want to clarify is that these 3 buttons are not hooked up the same way to the J-Pac as the additional buttons I'm hooking up here. These run off of the input of the original JAMA harness. Now the J-Pac handles that signal, but there's not individual pins like there is for the button 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, and 3 are, again, directly from the JAMA harness. So you're not going to see actual individual inputs for them. One thing I also did is when I crimped this wire here, I actually put some electric tape on it. It just makes it a stronger connection. Crimping isn't the easiest thing for me to do. And occasionally, the wires will come out of the actual connector, which is a pain. So this way, make sure it's a little bit stronger. You don't have to worry about that. So to connect the wires to the J-Pac, you just unscrew one of the screws. In this case, this is my player 1 button 4. And you just sandwich the screw, or you just screw it in and the screw sandwiches it between the metal inside, and you have a connection. This is a little long, you might want to trim this a little, but that's how it works, and you have to do it This side is player 1, this side is player 2. And again, we have the ground, which you actually have two options. If you wanted to, you can do two separate grounds, one for player 1, one for player 2. But like I said, you can just do a rig where you just use the same ground for 1 and 2. It doesn't really matter. It's going to work. Well, we have all the buttons hooked up now. Now it's a little bit of a mess. So what I'm going to do is, usually you have a pre-existing loom of wires. I'm just going to tape to that, tape the new wires right onto that loom. And it just makes it a little bit more neater. And it also is going to add a little bit more of durability if the wires are pulled. This way it's not pulling on those wires individually, it's pulling on the whole thing. And it's just going to make it a little bit more stronger if those wires get pulled. Now we're all done with our wiring. One thing to note about the J-Pac is not only does it support these 6 buttons, but it actually has 2 more slots for buttons 7 and 8 for both player 1 and 2. Now that could be useful if you needed a separate button in your control panel to be like the coin or the escape button to exit the game and go to a different game. Right now we're not going to put those in because we don't really want to drill into this control panel, but eventually we're going to make an exterior box for this unit to support these 2 extra buttons for each side. One other thing about the J-Pac, while it technically does support mono sound through the JAMA harness, it isn't the easiest thing to connect your computer audio output to it. One thing I did was take some pre-existing computer speakers with a sound amp and an external volume control and splice them in with the pre-existing speakers in the arcade unit. So now that we're all done, we're going to test to make sure that the controls work. By default now, buttons 4, 5, and 6 should be mapped, like I said earlier, to Mame 4, 5, and 6, meaning you shouldn't really have to configure anything in Mame as far as the buttons. But what you could do is just on the safe side, go into the Mame setup and go to your buttons and make sure that they're correct by mapping your buttons for player 1, button 4, 5, and 6, and so on, and do that for both players. Now once you do that, you should be able to go into your game and try your buttons, and they should work. So here we have the low kick, medium kick, fierce kick. So that's right, low kick, medium kick, fierce kick. So it's all set up. That's pretty much it. I know this was a little rough. So if you have any questions, feel free to toss us an email at Retroware TV, and I hope you enjoy this video. Again, if you're looking to buy the Jpac, you can go to Ultimarc.com. One thing to note though is that by default, the graphics card in the computer won't work with the J-Pac. It has to support 15 hertz output. A lot of graphics card actually kind of do support it. There's a program out there called Soft 15 hertz, which you can configure to get your card to output the 15 hertz so that the arcade monitor recognizes the signal. If you check out Soft 15 hertz, there's a whole forum about it, listing compatible cards that you could use with the J-Pac. There's also the arcade VGA card that Ultimarc has that right out of the box will work with the J-Pac. You don't have to do anything, no programming except installing the drivers, and it will work with an arcade monitor. So again, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys soon.